my goodness. It is so great to be back. I'm so happy you're here. This is fantastic. My intention was to take the summer off, and it just kept on going. I don't know if you had the same experience this summer, but the weather was spectacular. I was still swimming in October, and now just the thought of Christmas being, 6 weeks away or whatever it is. Is it that soon? Maybe not quite that soon. It feels a little daunting. I feel like summer just ended, and we've got a beautiful day out today. The sun is shining. The Ontario weather is glorious, so I hope you've been enjoying it. I hope you also took an extended summer and grabbed a couple of beach days and really enjoyed yourself. But thank you for being here today. I'm so excited to have you, and our guest is going to be such a treat today for you guys. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute, but I wanted to let you know that we are still with our amazing sponsor, Brenda Badome, and you guys know her clothing line. I'm wearing one of her gorgeous little dresses today. I'll try to stand up and show you. It's very cute, and I've actually paired it with just some leggings to keep me cozy. So please go to brendabadome.com and check out her beautiful new fall collection. And remember, if you use the coupon code Get to Know Her, Brenda is going to give you 21% off of your order, which is so generous. So be sure to check her out. The other sponsor we have of the show, you won't even believe this. Are you ready? I'm going to blow your mind, is Glam Jewels. Why didn't I think of that before? So as you know, all the jewels I'm wearing today are all Glam Jewels. And this necklace we just launched only to our VIPs on our email blast, which we sent out yesterday and today. And this is our 3 Little Wishes necklace. Every year we support a family who's suffering from the financial burdens of cancer. And the little necklaces are $35, and the proceeds go towards the family. And so until midnight tonight, actually, we are offering our VIPs on our email list tax included for the necklace. And then we will launch the necklace officially by the middle to the end of this week. So if you are interested in receiving that email, all you have to do is go to glamjewels.com, subscribe to the email list, and I will be sure to get that email out to you so you can also place your order by midnight tonight and get the tax included. Are you ready for our wonderful guest? I am so excited. I cannot wait for you to meet Kirsten Frey. Kirsten is a transformational life coach specializing in the grief recovery method. Kirsten's desire to help people started with a career in law enforcement for 17 years. Her passion for health and fitness led her to a rewarding career shift as a personal trainer and holistic nutritionist for several years. Her personal evolution continued with certifications in coaching, Reiki, and grief recovery. Today, Kirsten supports women moving through the natural changes, transitions, and loss we all experience in life in as healthy and wholehearted, can I speak today? No, in as healthy and a wholehearted way as possible, allowing them to move forward with greater peace and emotional freedom and create a life they love. Kirsten lives in Burlington with her husband, her son, and her dog, Angus. I was lucky enough to meet Kirsten on a vision board retreat last month, and her outlook on goal setting intrigued me and has opened my eyes to a whole new perspective on manifesting dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing Kirsten Frey. There she is. Woo! I wish I had confetti.
That is like the best introduction ever.
Well, you're a whole lot of awesomeness. I even had to read off the part about my experience with you because I just didn't want to miss out any of the details.
No, well, and honestly, that was such an amazing weekend that we were so lucky. And again, I think because of COVID, so many of us feel like we've gotten to know people through Zoom and all these events that we go to. And I felt like I had already known you because you're everywhere with Glam Jewels. And you'll notice I've got my Wallet to Wealth necklace on today.
Gorgeous.
Too. Oh, it's fantastic. I love it. And so it was really wonderful to meet you in person. And wow, did we ever just click? And I'm so
We
grateful
do.
that you invited me here today.
Oh, thank you, Kirsten. I'm so happy to have you. We totally, it was like an instant, like magnets. And we always sat together when we were eating. We were always together. I loved it. It was so
Yeah.
great. And the other thing, I just want to let the people that are watching know. So this was a fun retreat, and it was hosted by our mutual friend of ours, Whitney Hammond, who is having her Wallet to Wealth Gala on November the 11th, with proceeds going to Halton Women's Place, which is absolutely amazing. So this is the necklace that Kirsten is wearing. The proceeds from the sales of this necklace also go to Halton Women's Place in support of Whitney. So if there are any women out there, there's going to be like 5 guest speakers
Yeah,
at the
it's an
event.
incredible lineup. I'm really interested to hear their
Yeah.
stories.
Me too, and it's all virtual, so it's super easy. We'll actually post the link to get tickets hereafter, so you guys can check it out too. But so Kirsten and I went to this little gathering of 11 women, and all the women, we all had one thing in common, and that was nobody knew each other. And as Kirsten had said, like, we had seen each other, but we did not really know each other at all, and we walked out with a group of sisters, didn't we? Like,
Sure did.
yeah, it was amazing. So Kirsten, I'm going to ask you the question everyone is dying to know, and that is, what did little Kirsten want to be when she grew up?
Oh boy. Honestly,
Mhm.
Kirsten wanted to be a teacher. I loved school. Like home wasn't like I had a good home life. I grew up in a middle class neighborhood and stuff like that. But my parents were like emotionally distant. So my friends really became a really like a big support for me, like right from a very young age. And so I was one of those weirdos that loved school. Like I loved going to school. I loved seeing my friends at school. I enjoyed the academic part of school. So um, I just think teachers have a really big part. Teachers, coaches, those kinds of things. Like as you're
Mhm.
growing up, they can have a real impact. And I know I had, a few teachers that I can think of that really just, I love the way that they did their work, and they made it fun. So yeah, teaching, I always just saw the value in that.
Yeah, and look where you are today. It's come full
Yeah,
circle.
it did come full circle.
That's amazing. So I wanted to kind of go back to where you were 17 years ago, deciding that you wanted to be a police officer. A young woman entering a male-dominated industry. That's always an interesting topic of conversation.
Yeah.
So what were your life experiences that sort of led up to you wanting to have
Well,
that sort of a career?
yeah, that's an interesting question. And I kind of love that because I think when I was a young person, it was teaching or policing that I always, it was going to be one of the two of them. And
Mhm.
now I sort of am doing both. I
Yeah.
have done both. So I got on the police department at 21. And I think, like I said, because of my upbringing, which was fine, there was no trauma or anything else like that. It was just an emotionally distant household. So I learned very early on how to be very self sufficient, self reliant, and really valued my friendships that I've had, some of which I still have today. So that was really, really important for me. But it was always this feeling that I had to do it on my own. Like I was alone, not lonely, but alone. And
Mhm.
I was responsible for myself and having to do, like, if I wanted to get anything done, I was going to have to do it myself. And so, yeah, I feel like from a protective point of view and also from a point of view of wanting to be a contribution in a way that was going to, um, be meaningful for me. Policing at that time in terms of like justice and equality was really important for me at that time. And I always got along with men really well. I feel like I probably have been operating in my divine masculine most of my life. So working with primarily men in policing, it was an easy fit for me. And I really loved policing, and I was there for 17 years, and it was um, powerful for me in a lot of ways because getting on at 21 and leaving at what,
Yeah.
36 or whatever it was, 38 maybe. there were a lot of experience there that shaped me too as a younger person, a young adult moving into my life. And so, lots of amazing things, connections with the people that I worked with, but also some losses there in terms of professional losses, friends and colleagues that I lost to violence and suicide on the job. So,
Wow.
yeah, so it was interesting from that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how did that affect you? I'm always curious. I think we all look at, the police officers in our communities that are out there doing their jobs, but the one thing that I always think of when I see, a cop going by in a car is I think, here they are driving through this lovely neighborhood that I know and I love, but they know so much more than me. They know what's going on behind those doors. They've seen things that I have never seen and never will see, and they're here to protect, right? And it's such a gift that these people give us every day by going out there and risking not only their lives, but their own mental health, for us.
Truly.
And I just wondered, Kristen, if that affected you in any way, like the things that you saw or the things that you knew were happening, even now after, having left, were there some of those things that stuck with you or have stuck with you kind of long term that you still are working through? Or
I would say that's a great question, because I know there's a lot of officers that have and that really do struggle. And because we all have a limit, right, of what we can see and hear and see in the world. And there is a lot of trauma that we can see on the job. I think I was fortunate in that I probably didn't have maybe as many situations as other officers had. There were a couple, though, for sure, that really impacted me. One was the loss of my friend Todd Bayless, who was a Metro police officer, but he and I had both worked in the hospitality industry before we both got into policing. And so I had actually lent him my books when he went to police college, because I went ahead of him. And so he was killed on the job a few years later, and that was heartbreaking for me. And going to that police funeral, which is powerful in and of itself, that really broke my heart. And I think I was lucky, because a lot for me was I had a support group outside of policing. So I had really strong friendships within the police department, but I still had a life outside of policing. My life wasn't just only about that. And so I was fortunate to have friends that helped ground me, that I could talk about the things that impacted me. And I think sometimes we just have our own tools and skills and things like that to move through those kinds of losses. That wasn't always the case for other losses that I had, though, in my personal life. And so, inevitably that brought me to the work that I'm doing now. But it was hard. And there are a lot of officers that I know that have, and I mean, I got out after 17 years as a personal choice, not because of, anything was wrong with policing. I loved my time there and the people that I worked with. But for me, there was a restlessness, and it was time for me to change and do something different, which I have followed that now a couple of times, and people think I've been nuts to do it, because, leaving this like great job where it's awesome pay and you have benefits and a pension and all that stuff, to go into like doing holistic nutrition and then inevitably personal training from that. And people were like, wow, that's really brave. But they're saying it and you're like, you can see behind their eyes, they're like, you're crazy for taking this leap. And, maybe I was a little bit, but I was fortunate that I have a spouse that, believed in me and, thought that I can do anything that I needed to do. So yeah, I was lucky that way.
That's amazing. And I love that story. Actually the time period that you were policing, I also had a career at Canada Post for that long. I was there, and same age, like I think like 19 till 37, 38. So it is really great when you can take a step back and look at yourself from a different perspective. And what is it that I want for the next chapter of my life? Right? We have to give that to ourselves. And it doesn't always mean making more money, or it's about the fulfillment of what you want to do, what your purpose is,
Absolutely.
and how you can help others. Yeah. So great. So Kirsten, you had something happen when you were 40 years old that I am quite fascinated by. Something that, was quite traumatic in your life. Can you talk to us about that?
The adoption?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 48 actually when that
Oh, you were
happened.
48. Oh my goodness. Okay. Sorry, I misread on your website.
Oh, that's okay.
You're in
No,
your four.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, so 48.
Okay.
I had gone through a lot of, like all of us, if you walk the planet any period of time, we all are going to go through lots of changes and transitions and losses in our life. Like grief is part of the human experience.
Yeah.
It's just we're never really taught what to do with grief or how to cope with it. And so we all just kind of muddle along with this information that most of us grew up with, which isn't always helpful in a lot of cases, but we manage and we adapt as we move along. So when I was 48, I found out that I was adopted, which for me at the time that I heard those words that you are adopted, it was like, I always called it a soul shifting moment because I could actually physically feel something inside my chest like shift. And what it was heartbreak. I just didn't have the language for that. And so immediately I went into like investigative mode, right? Like falling back on my policing background, like asking a lot of questions. And unfortunately, the person that told me that, it was a member of my family, couldn't provide more information because my mother had decided, my parents, but more my mother, had decided that the adoption of myself and my brother was going to remain a secret in our family. And she had given explicit instructions to everyone in the family that this was not to be discussed with my brother and I, even though other members of the family really lobbied throughout the years. Like as we got older, like, we really need to tell these kids that they were adopted. It's information they should have, even just from a health perspective. And my mom was adamant that wasn't going to happen, and did say that if anybody was not going to be able to keep that to themselves, that they wouldn't be welcome to have a relationship with my brother and I. So she'd excommunicate them from the family. So it made sense in a lot of ways, because I do remember being younger, like under 10, probably 8 to 12, where I remember where my grandparents would come to visit my dad's folks, and at Christmas time always, which was always fun for us. But usually within that week, I could feel the energy in the house change. And I never understood it. I always just assumed my mom didn't like her in-laws. But now I realize, there was probably a conversation that happened after my brother and I went to bed on one of those evenings, and it would shift like the energy where it was palpable in the house, that something was different. So that made sense in that. It made sense for a lot of things growing up, that there was a lot of, like I said, emotional sort of, not neglect, but just emotional disconnect. And so growing up, that was always perplexing to me. I never understood it. I tried as a younger person to make connections, especially with my mom. And there was always a guarded barrier there, and I couldn't understand why. And then of course, after the adoption, it was like, well, of course she couldn't let her wall down, because if she allowed herself to get emotionally too close to me, and something would slip at some point. And I don't know what her reason was for not wanting us to know that we were adopted. We'll never know. And that's okay. But at the time that I found out, it was shocking. And my first thought was, I have no tribe. So this sense of feeling alone my whole life really just solidified in that moment. It was like, I have no tribe. I don't belong anywhere. Right. And so as the days and weeks kind of went on, and just trying to integrate the information, I did what so many of us do, is I adapted to the information that I had, but my heart wasn't healed from that. And just the resentment and anger I had, that secret kept us from being a family, like a true family, where everybody could just be open and honest and share. We could have been so much more connected and close. Our family was small, so it would have been great just to have everybody that much more connected. And so that piece of it, like the resentment of not being able to have those close connections with everyone in the family, because everybody was sort of on guard about that, was hard.
Wow. I can't even imagine. That's amazing. So had your mom passed away, Kirsten, or is she?
So when I had
Is your
found out I was adopted,
yeah.
yes, she had already passed away, as had
Oh,
my dad.
okay.
So they both passed early
Oh,
on. And
wow.
yeah, so almost everybody was gone to ask questions of. I could have followed through and found out, who my biological family was,
Mhm,
but I made the conscious decision not to do that, only because, like, as I said, the days and weeks went on.
mhm.
Um, as I sat and thought about it, I was like, I've created my own tribe, like with my family that I have now, the friends that I have now. And it's like, I didn't feel the need to
Mhm.
go out searching for my biological family.
Right. Okay. And did you and your brother come from the same family?
No,
Oh,
or at least
wow.
not that I know of.
Yeah.
So we were both
Yeah.
adopted. No, and actually, no, we weren't. So we're not
Mhm.
biological brother and sister as well.
Okay.
Hmm.
Amazing. What a story. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my
That's
pleasure.
so yeah, it's such an honor because that's a story not many people would share, and by sharing stories we help and heal others, and I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you.
Yeah. So through all of this experience, I'm like processing it all myself because I kind of had made up my own timelines for you that are now like shuffled around. I made assumptions. So you had already left policing before finding out about this. You'd left like 10
Oh,
years
yeah.
prior.
Yep.
Okay,
I had already
interesting.
shifted out of policing. I had been,
Yeah,
at the time I found out I was a personal trainer at that time. I also had a holistic
yeah.
nutrition background. So and it was funny because I was getting to a point where that restlessness was kicking in again. And even
Mm,
though I had a very successful career as a trainer, I had amazing clients. I loved them, lots of shifts and transitions for them in positive ways, not just in the gym, but in their lives,
yeah.
it's been such a privilege to walk with people along their journeys. I think that's a skill that I have and that I'm really grateful to have, because it's really interesting to be a part of people's lives in that way.
Mhm.
But there was already this like restlessness. And for me, I know it because it shows up. I call it being crunchy. When I start getting like short with people, or my patience is really kind of limited, and like I'm kind of like restless but don't really know why. And now I
Mm,
understand that that's my sort of hint that something is going to shift and transition for me. So I was already sort of in that space when I found out, and I ended up leaving where I was working probably about a year later. And again, it took me a while to really kind of absorb that information, and what did that mean for me, and how did I feel about where I was in my life, and
mhm.
what did this mean. And again, I think I adapted to it, but I didn't heal from it, which is what happened. Because at that point, when I left Good Life, I started my business as a transformational life coach, and I was doing vision board workshops and Reiki and all these amazing things, which I love to do. But there was a part of me that was like, there's a piece of the puzzle missing, and I could never put my finger on what that was. And what happened with finding out about the adoption is it actually set me down the path, because like 18 months later, I'm doing this weekend away with a group of ladies that's sort of business oriented. And also, we were doing Reiki. We were all Reiki practitioners at that time as well. And I knew I was going to get triggered around the business piece of it, because I knew that I was like, there was a piece that was just like not there for me. And I had sort of an emotional like upset at that weekend. But what came out of that was heal your heart. Like, so words are really powerful
Mm.
for me. And I get words that come to me a lot as I'm doing things. And it was heal your heart. And I remember feeling like, what does that mean? Like it was like this little
Yeah.
whisper, which was my intuition, my inner guidance, that kind of came up and like heal your heart. And then this picture of a woman who I'd seen at a networking event the fall before. So this was in February, I guess about 2 years ago now. And she was someone who did grief recovery, and I didn't even know what
Mm.
that was. But her picture popped up in my mind's eye, and I was like, okay. So when I got home from that weekend, I gave her a call and we had a chat, and it was like, yep, I need to do this. And sure enough, I
Wow.
did a deep dive into my own grief work, not just around the adoption, but there were other things that I thought I had already dealt with,
Mm.
but realized that I hadn't. And it was holding me back in certain ways. One was a miscarriage that I had. There were other relationship things that had happened that I had put up my own guarded walls around my heart now, where it wasn't anyone else's fault, but now I was doing that in a self-protective way to avoid the pain of loss and change. But now it was limiting me from living the life that I wanted and the connections that I wanted with people. So when I did my work with her, I did like a huge, big, deep dive. I'm forever grateful. We're still in contact. I consider her my mentor. And it was like, as soon as I started, I knew that grief recovery was the missing piece of the puzzle that I had been looking for. And
That's
so,
incredible.
yeah.
And it's so interesting that grief recovery, we do think of, grief as usually experiencing the death of a loved one, not just shit that happens in life, right?
It is.
Like,
It's really anytime that there's a change, there is, grief can come from, like, grief is all the conflicting emotions that we have when there's a change in our familiar way of being. So if you lose your job, or there's a health change, or there's financial issues, or, there's infertility or miscarriage, or things just didn't work out, like even with COVID, oh my gosh, like the whole world was grieving around that, because so many things, not just because of people's health and people dying because of the virus, but people couldn't do those rituals and ceremonies and things that we do to come together to support one another in times of loss. We were truly all isolated during that time frame. So things like major events and milestones in our lives, like vacations or family get-togethers and funerals and weddings and baby showers and all of those things, like, even from my own life, our own example, like our son graduated from university in April and there was no convocation. So he's just finished his entire career of school, which he's known his whole life, and your degree gets mailed to you. And it's like, thanks for coming out. But we need those ceremonies and rituals to find our emotional completion for that, like to end one aspect of our life before we move into the next stage of our lives, right? And it's when we don't do that, that we carry that emotional baggage with us. And that can have an impact on relationships, our health, our career, all of these things. And, a lot of us don't even recognize it. Like, that's how I found about grief recovery. It wasn't because I had suffered an acute loss, like a death in the family or anything like this. It was all these compounding, unresolved grief that I had around things that had happened in my past and with other people and things like that, which I thought I had dealt with. But I had dealt with it up here intellectually, which means I had adapted to what had happened, but I hadn't actually healed because, grief isn't logical, it's emotional. So when we try to use our head to figure it out or come to an understanding of it, that's part of the process. But our head doesn't heal our heart, right? It's the wrong tool for the job. So, we really have to find a way to heal our hearts from the emotional upsets that we have and the changes and losses that we all have as a part of just like living life. But we've learned all this misinformation growing up on how to deal with grief, like don't feel sad, don't feel bad, right? Or replacing losses. We find those things we hear very early on, right? Like, don't, you get your heart broken for the first time in like middle school or high school, and it's like, don't worry, there's plenty of fish in the sea. And, I mean, there was even an app for that. It's like, that's how much that misinformation is. But the thing is, you can't go into a next relationship without completing how you emotionally felt from the first one. Otherwise, you're just bringing emotional baggage with you, which is why so many times those other relationships don't end up working in the long run, because we're not complete with what's happened before.
Right. I also love, Kirsten, how you talk about being gentle with yourself, taking it back to the self and really taking care of this person instead of all the stuff that's going on around us, right? And I think that's so insightful and so that's the hard work, because I know for me, having gone through my own grief, my grief always takes me back to who hurt me, how I was hurt, how could they do this? Why did this happen? What could I have done differently to have prevented this? I won't say I blame others. I just look at, oh my God, how could this have played out differently? And that's where my like that could drive me crazy, anybody crazy, trying to rework it, reframe it, look at it again and again from this perspective, that over analyzing, right? So I've always been intrigued by this idea of, let's not do that. Let's take care of ourselves. And that letting go piece, like, how do we truly let that go?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because we might be able to do that in certain areas of our life and then not in others, right? Like some areas it's
Yeah.
easier to do that than in others. But that's such a great question, because I think we just grew up with so much misinformation around grief and loss. And it's like, we just don't want to look at those painful things. And I get it. But there's a natural review that happens when there's a loss or a transition or a change. And sometimes these are positive changes, right? Like maybe you're leaving university, but you're getting your first like full-time job and you're moving out on your own. Like those are positive things. Getting married, right? Having kids. These are all positive things that can happen for us. And that's why people get confused, because sometimes there's conflicting emotions, because yeah, that can be very positive and you're looking forward to it, but it's also an end to your like being a solo person, right? Or the having the safety and security of your family, right? As you're like reaching out onto your own, moving out on your own, doing all those things, right? So it really is about honoring the places that we've been as we continue to travel forward, right? And there is a natural review when we have a change or loss. So that's part of it. And that's what gives us the opportunity to look at all those things that, were either, we either said or did, right? Or didn't say or do, or that other people said or did, or didn't say or do, and allow us to like move through steps, right? Which is part of like the grief recovery method. I'm so grateful for it. I mean, there's many tools to help us heal. And I truly believe that we all come into our own healing in our own time, in whatever way is for us, right? And so that might be different things for different people. I just love that the grief recovery method is a tool. I had never even heard of it before I did it, but it's been around for 40 years and it's helped like millions of people around the world, right? So it's just another way to help people move through a difficult time, because the fact is, we never got a course in school about how to deal with difficult situations that happen in our lives. We've grown up with all this misinformation, right? Which is like, don't feel bad, don't feel sad. And men hear that way more even than women. So talk about not being able to access emotions, not having the capacity to, because it was never safe for you to do that ever. Replacing loss is one of them. Grieving alone, which a lot of us learn also as a young age. Being strong, that was a big one. I mean, I lived that one for years, right? Like, especially in the choices that I made in my career as a police officer. Well, of course, you got to be strong. Other people are relying on you to have it together. And so, you wear this be strong, but, we're human. And that's the other thing when you talk about like the busyness of life too, especially now we have so much technology, which allows us to be connected like 24/7, and where there's so much stimulus coming at us. You could, be on your phone or on the computer or work, and you can work around the clock and all these things that are there. And I mean, there's positives to that. But the big thing that I find, and I see this especially now in my work with people, is that just because we can doesn't mean that we should. And that's why we're seeing people burning out. That's why we're seeing people like not being able to have healthy boundaries around work and relationship. And it's difficult because it gets addictive, right? We ride that adrenaline rush and roller coaster and expectations that we have for ourselves and others have for us as well, in terms of being always available. But we're human. We need time to integrate. We need time to rest and repair. And, even in the gym as a personal trainer, your workout is really important, but the rest and repair is just as important and gets you your gains. And it's the same thing with us as human beings. When we do not take that time, and it's not like, hey, take a day off here, or here's your week vacation. There's no set time. Like, your body knows how much time it needs, and it doesn't necessarily fit into some linear plan that you have, right?
That's right.
You need to learn to listen to what we actually need in our systems, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And and find ways to be able to do that. I think more and more people are coming into that now.
I think so too. And I loved what you said earlier about when you're feeling crunchy.
Yeah.
Because I think that so much of that is true. It's like, now that we're coming out of the pandemic, it's like, what are you keeping and what are you saying goodbye to from before? And I get that a lot. It's amazing. It's like, that crunchy is such a great way to describe it. As soon as somebody asks me to do something that I used to do and I don't want to do it anymore, my body is like rejecting it. Like, it's so powerful now. Whereas before I'd be more on the people pleaser side, like, sure, I'll do that for you. And now I'm like, no.
Yeah,
Nope,
that's a
not doing that.
solid no.
That's a solid no. Yeah.
With some of my coaching clients, what I remember, because this was me a couple of years ago, I remember I was catching myself saying no to a lot of things, right? Which some people need to say no more, but I was recognizing like, oh, I'm saying no without really thinking about it.
Right.
So what am I cutting myself off from? Opportunities and possibilities. So it was a couple of years ago, and my goal for myself was like, okay, here's my criteria. If it interests me, excites me, inspires me, or delights me, it's an automatic yes, and I'll figure it out, right?
Yes, that's a great way to be.
Yeah, and if it didn't hit one of those four, then it was a hard no. And it was so much easier then. It was just like I, would run that checklist, like, does it do, and how do I feel? Nope. And then it was just no. And I didn't feel like I had to explain it or justify it or anything else like that. And yet when it did hit one of those four, it got me into doing some experiences that maybe I wouldn't have done before, and said yes to things, and meeting new people and experiences that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't said yes. So.
Exactly. That's right. You remember, did you ever see the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey, where he says,
No.
he has to, oh, that's so good. He's dating a girl and she's like a real adventurer and he isn't. And she convinces him, I think that's how it starts. And then she convinces him to say yes to everything. Like, it doesn't matter how it makes him feel. He just has to say yes to, it's pretty funny. But this is the great thing, like coming out on the other side of the pandemic. I think now we're looking for adventure, but we're looking for meaningful stuff. Like we realize maybe we're all getting to know ourselves better, and we know what gets us revved up and sets our heart on fire, and we know the stuff that's like, no thanks, right? It's so great. And even just subtle changes in behavior, like the way that we used to do things, maybe we're doing them differently now. Like when we were all at the Wallet to Wealth thing, it was cold. It was a nice day, but the water was cold and I wanted to swim. And the old me would have been like, hey ladies, who's going to join me? Round up the troops. And I thought, I don't have to impose that on other people. They'll see me swimming. If they want to come, they'll come. And I would have never done that 2 or 3 years ago. I would have felt like I had to recruit. I had to, it's so funny how we put ourselves in these places, or who we're expected to be, and our, or who we think others want to see. I don't know. It's interesting.
And I think that weekend too was eye-opening for a lot of us too, because for a lot of us, it was the first like group experience, right? Since we could all kind of get together. And I mean, we are tribal beings. And I think we've all been missing. Like, some people are more extroverted or introverted, and that is perfectly fine. But we all need connection. And I think having that weekend with all those ladies, most of which we didn't know, was so great. And we ended up just having like a really magical weekend and so much fun and just great stories and laughs and all the things. Like it was awesome. And we wouldn't have had that experience if we all hadn't said yes.
Exactly. So Kirsten, I want to talk a little bit about that weekend and the amazing vision board workshop you did with all of us. So I've done vision boards before, and I actually hosted a little workshop here myself. But when I went to yours, I was like, oh, now I get it.
So, I think a lot of people, oh, sorry, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say the whole process of how you walked us through what our goals were, our dreams were, our visions, but why? And then you had me in the hot seat and I was brought to tears, and then two other women had to leave because they were crying. But it was great because what you did was you really illustrated, you chose one thing out of mine and you asked me, why is this so important to you? And it was about travel, and it was, wanting to travel with my mom. And you said, okay, so where are you going with your mom? Oh, well, we're going to go to Tuscany. That's where I want to go with my mom. Okay. And what does it look like there? And what do you smell? And what do you taste? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And all of a sudden I was like in Tuscany. And then you asked me, and why do you want this so badly? And I said, because I want to make memories with my mom. And I started to cry, and then two other women but it was so, I was really like emotionally like hooked into that big time, like just the way that you framed it, and it became so meaningful to me. Everything I put on that board after having that emotional experience with you, yeah. So what I wanted to share with you, and I want to hear your perspective on that this weekend too, but I have been every morning meditating with that board. And I cannot do, I'm like a person who does something for a week, something else for two, goes back to the other thing. And actually I'm okay with that. I think that's who I am. And I like to be the adventurer and always doing new things. But this experience, I'm telling you, every morning I just take 5 minutes. I sit with the board. I put Olivia Newton-John's Magic on. I crank it up and I look at everything and I try to get back into that feeling. But the fantastic thing about this whole process, which I've never experienced before, is that now I see myself day to day in a completely different way. And I know exactly why I'm not getting to where I want to be on that board. I'm calling myself out on all kinds of things. And it's like a lot of it is the self-talk. A lot of it is all of this nurturing that I need to be doing for myself. It's so amazing. Like, thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, because that's exactly like, that's the amazing thing about, that's why I love still doing these vision boards. And I again, with COVID, people were like, oh, are you going to do it online? And it was like, no, because for me, and there's a lot of really great coaches that do it online, and that's their thing. But for me, it really is about like the intimate, like, the writing exercise that goes out beforehand, which sometimes people are like, oh my God, this was a really tough question, because they're not questions we ask ourselves. We're so used to, as like entrepreneurs and, women in relationships, we're always taking care of everyone else and everything else first, which is fine. It's well-meaning and well-intentioned, but not always well-balanced. And that's part of it. Like, our body and our spirit is always looking for balance, right? And you're not always going to be in balance, but it's being aware of when we're out of balance, and then how do we do that? And so the vision board was so interesting because it's more than just goal setting, because we're all, we all know how to goal set it, but it's really tapping into what is our intention. And intention and goals are very different. And then, like you said, the clarity of our intention. And that's the piece that a lot of us are missing, is the clarity piece. Like, we know what our goals are, we have intentions, but we're not always clear. And so sometimes if our clarity's not all there, it's kind of like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. So we're kind of making forward motion, but it's like, it's like hard, and it's like really wearing and kind of tiring. Whereas when we can get that foot off the brake, it's like now smooth sailing, right? So I love it when people have epiphanies like that. But I'll be frank, like, you're having these experiences because you're practicing the patience and consistency with tapping in for 5 minutes. Like, all it is, like, you're worth 5 minutes in a day, like, especially in the beginning, to be like, who do I want to be as I step into the world right now, today?
Yes.
Right? Because we only have today. We only have this moment. So who do you want to be stepping forward into this day? And then go do your day,
Yes, that's right. So amazing.
Yeah. And your awarenesses that you're having too, like, you're seeing your own blocks start to come up. But that's great, because now you're aware. Now that you're aware of it, it's not like a default unconscious behavior. Now you're consciously aware of it, which is awesome, because now you have a choice. You can continue to keep doing what you do, which is fine if you choose to do that, or you can make a different choice.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the exciting part, because that's where you realize like you really truly are limitless.
Mm-hmm. And it's cool because a lot of those choices are on the board, and it's like, it's so close. When are you gonna get to
There.
it's right there. I just want to grab it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
amazing. So Kirsten, you were telling me you have something special coming up at the end of the month for people.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that right?
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, two things. The first one is November is my birthday month.
Yeah. Happy
Yay!
birthday.
Thank you very much. And so, in light of that, and because the grief work that I have found to be so impactful and powerful in helping people to like free themselves emotionally so that they can find peace and step forward into a life that they really truly love and can create, I'm offering a 20% savings on the Grief Recovery Method program for anybody that signs up with me for that this month. And my next vision board workshop will be December 5th, and that's a Sunday.
Oh, fantastic. And where are you holding that?
In Burlington. So
in
if
Burlington.
anybody's
Okay.
interested, then we'll just put my contact information there, and you can
Oh,
just reach out and
great.
let me know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, your workshops are the best. And you know what, you guys, she has sparkles and stuff. My vision board has sparkles all over. It's so great. Oh, amazing. So, Kirsten, what's a busy girl like you got going on for the rest of today then?
Some work. I have some client work this afternoon, and this evening a couple of phone calls. And before I do that, I think I'm going to head out for a nice walk because it's so beautiful out today.
Yeah, it's amazing. Get that fresh air in.
How about you?
Amazing. Well, I'm in the process of getting ready for Christmas here at the studio, so I've got some design ideas I want to play around with, and and actually, I was online the other day. I'm obsessed with there's so many amazing young people who have done their own photography through the pandemic, and it's called self-portraiture, where they're doing selfies with cameras, but they're actually posing and doing the makeup and the hair and the whole scene and the vibe. And I'm like fascinated by this. So, it's so amazing when you can bring emotions to the screen to invite people into your world and make them feel great. Like, it's kind of like, making a vision board for your clients on how you want them to feel. Right.
Exactly.
And oh, it's so fantastic. So yeah, I think I'm going to throw on a couple of YouTube videos about that. Learn from the amazing millennials and Gen Zers out there. And yeah, it'll be good. But I'm so grateful, Kirsten, for all your time today and talking to us and sharing your story. Just awesome.
I was grateful to be invited. So thank you for letting me come on and talk about all the things. And it was just great to spend more time with you again.
Oh, you too. And we'll have to plan a walk soon. And you know what, actually, before I say goodbye, there have been a couple of people who are saying very nice things on here. So I'm going to read them out to you. Kathy Watson says, hi, guys. Amy Bell, hi, ladies. Joanne Stefanini, hi, ladies. Miss you guys. Amy said, geez, Louise, 21. Now that I'm in my 50s, 21 feels so young to have that kind of responsibility, I'll say. Dawn Lumsden says, hi, ladies. Amy Bell again says, wow, Kirsten, this is so interesting. Thank you for sharing. And she also says, she says it was a great weekend. Loved your vision board exercise. Was fabulous. Stuff is happening already. My board is beside me on my south Feng Shui activation wall. And she said, disco remix for you, Monica Graves, with a link to YouTube. Oh my God, that's the best. I'll be dancing this afternoon. Okay, that's so perfect.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Thanks, ladies. Thanks for all the insights.
Yeah, and I'll see you at the Wallet to Wealth Gala, girl. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to put you in the green room.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Kirsten is absolutely wonderful, lovely. She's full of so much information. And my gosh, when we were away that weekend, I actually got to have a nice 1 hour walk with her. And it was truly magical. So get to know her even more. Follow her on all her social media handles. And I want to thank you guys once again for joining me today. Be sure to go to our sponsor's website, brendabadome.com, and use the coupon code Get to Know Her for 21% off of your order for some nice new fall clothes. And if you are interested in receiving the email about our 3 Little Wishes necklace, helping a family suffering from cancer this year for 2021, and you want to grab that necklace today before midnight with tax included, just go to glamjewels.com and subscribe to our list. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and click the subscribe button here and tune in to more amazing interviews with absolutely incredible women. We will talk to you soon and see you next week. Bye for now.